Sometimes, the ones you laugh at carry the power you could never imagine. And sometimes, a single insult becomes the seed of an unforgettable lesson. The morning sunlight poured over the busy streets of downtown Atlanta, bouncing off the tall glass buildings that looked like mirrors stretching into the sky. People rushed in every direction, their shoes clicking on the sidewalks, their phones pressed to their ears. It was just another day of business. Another day where success was measured in the size of your wallet and the cut of your suit. Amara Johnson, a 38-year-old black woman, walked quietly down the street with her handbag clutched close. She wore a simple navy blue dress, nothing flashy, nothing expensive. Her shoes were scuffed from months of wear, but they carried her with steady confidence. Her hair was pulled back neatly, though a few strands escaped in the morning breeze. To most people who saw her, she looked like just another working woman trying to make ends meet. And maybe that was true, at least from the outside. What no one could see was the life Amara had lived, the storms she had survived, and the strength that had been carved into her spirit over years of being underestimated. That morning, she had one simple task: visit the bank and finalize a few documents. Nothing extraordinary, nothing to draw attention. At least, that was what she thought. She stepped inside the wide glass doors of First American Trust Bank, one of the largest financial institutions in the city. The air conditioning greeted her with a sharp chill. The polished marble floors reflected the gleam of the chandeliers above. The bank was quiet, but carried an atmosphere of authority, almost arrogance. The kind of place where money spoke louder than humanity. Amara walked toward the front desk. She smiled politely at the receptionist, a young white woman with carefully styled blonde hair. The receptionist's eyes flickered over Amara, then down at her shoes, and then back up again. The smile she returned was thin, almost forced. "Yes, how can I help you?" the receptionist asked, her tone cool. "I need to see Mr. Richard Stone, the manager," Amara said calmly. "I have some documents he asked me to bring in." The receptionist raised her eyebrows, as if surprised that this ordinary-looking woman had business with the manager. Still, she nodded. "One moment." She pressed a button on her desk phone, whispered something, then gestured toward a large glass office at the far end of the bank. "You can go in." Amara walked steadily, though she felt the eyes of a few employees following her. Some glanced at her, then at each other, with smirks tugging at their lips. She ignored them. Inside the office, Richard Stone sat behind a massive oak desk. He was in his mid-40s, dressed in a sharp gray suit, with slicked-back hair and a smirk that seemed permanently etched on his face. His posture screamed superiority. When Amara stepped in, he didn't rise. He barely looked at her. Instead, he tapped his pen against a stack of papers. "Yes," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who is used to commanding. "I brought the documents you asked for." Amara replied, setting her bag down gently. She opened it and handed him a folder. Richard took the folder, glanced at it briefly, then tossed it onto his desk as if it were nothing. His eyes finally rested on her, scanning her from head to toe. And then he laughed. The sound was sharp, cold. "You know," he said, "when my secretary told me a woman was here to deliver papers, I didn't expect." This, Amara's brows furrowed slightly. "This?" "Yes," he said, leaning back in his chair. "A cleaning lady, maybe. Someone who mops the floors after hours. Certainly not someone doing business with me. Tell me, do you even know what kind of bank this is? Do you understand the level of people we serve here?" His words dripped with arrogance. But what stung more was the laughter that drifted from the open office door. A few employees had gathered nearby, pretending to be busy while clearly listening in. They chuckled softly, covering their mouths, exchanging knowing looks. Amara stood still, her eyes steady. Inside, her heart tightened, but she forced her face to remain calm. "I know exactly where I am," she said, "and I know why I am here." Richard snorted. "Do you?" "Because you look out of place. Maybe you'd be more comfortable with a mop and a bucket. After all, people like you are better suited for cleaning than for banking." The laughter outside grew louder. Someone even whispered she should grab a broom. Amara felt her cheeks heat, but she didn't move. She had heard insults before. She had been underestimated before. What they didn't know was that she carried a truth so powerful it would silence every mocking voice in that room. She looked Richard straight in the eye. "Be careful what you assume," she said softly. Richard smirked again, clearly amused. "Or what? What are you going to do?" Amara didn't answer. Not yet. What no one in that office knew, what not even Richard himself had realized, was that the woman standing in front of him was not just anyone. She was the wife of Marcus Johnson, the man who owned 70% of the bank's shares. But Amara wasn't ready to reveal that. Not yet. Sometimes silence was the sharpest weapon. And this battle was only beginning. The tension in the office lingered like smoke. Richard Stone leaned back in his leather chair, his smirk refusing to fade. He tapped his pen against the desk, enjoying the discomfort he believed he was creating. To him, Amara was just another woman who had wandered into a place she didn't belong. "You know," Richard said, his voice dripping with arrogance, "I've worked with investors, CEOs, men who move billions across this city, and then you walk in, thinking you can sit here in front of me. It's almost entertaining." The employees outside chuckled again. Their laughter floated into the office, feeding Richard's pride. Amara could hear it all. Each laugh was a reminder of how quick people were to judge what they didn't understand. But instead of shrinking, she straightened her back. Her eyes softened, but her voice carried calm authority. "I didn't come here to entertain you," she said. "I came here for business." Richard raised a brow. "Business? With you? What could someone like you possibly offer?" His words sliced the air, sharp and humiliating. He leaned forward now, lowering his voice but raising its cruelty. "Listen carefully. If you want to work here, I might be able to find a place for you. Not in finance, of course. But maybe you could sweep the lobby floors or wipe down the glass doors. Someone like you would look better holding a mop than holding papers." A burst of laughter came from the hall. Someone even clapped softly, mocking the idea. Amara inhaled deeply, her fingers tightening on her bag. She wanted to shout, to reveal who she truly was. But something in her heart whispered, "Not yet. Let them dig their own hole." Richard leaned back again, crossing his arms. "That's right. Silence suits you. Maybe next time, bring some cleaning supplies instead of wasting my time." Amara slowly turned toward the door, her face calm, though her spirit burned. As she stepped out, the employees near the doorway parted slightly, their smirks unashamed. One whispered, "Better get her a broom." Another giggled. Amara didn't flinch. She walked past them with quiet dignity. She knew the truth would soon strike harder than any insult could. As Amara walked out of Richard's office, not everyone in the bank was laughing. Near the far end of the lobby, a young teller named Claire watched quietly. She was in her early 20s, new to the job, still learning the culture of the bank. Unlike her colleagues, Claire didn't find anything funny about humiliating a stranger. She felt her stomach twist as she saw Amara walk away. Claire had been raised by her grandmother, a woman who worked as a housekeeper for decades to support her family. Watching Richard mock Amara triggered memories she didn't want to remember. She saw not just a customer, but her grandmother in that moment, a woman underestimated and belittled, yet strong enough to endure. "Why do they do that?" Claire whispered under her breath. The colleague beside her shrugged. because it's true. She doesn't belong here, but Claire wasn't convinced. Something about Amara's calm composure seemed out of place for someone supposedly powerless. There was a quiet strength in her eyes. Something that told Claire this story wasn't finished. Amara, meanwhile, walked out of the office and found a seat in the corner of the lobby. She pulled out her phone, sending a simple message. "I'm here. It's time." She didn't need to do more. The wheels were already in motion. 30 minutes later, the heavy glass doors of the bank opened again. This time, the sound of polished shoes striking marble echoed with authority. Heads turned. Employees paused. Even Richard, from inside his office, looked up. Marcus Johnson had arrived, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit. Marcus carried himself with effortless power. His deep brown skin glowed under the chandelier lights, and his eyes were sharp, focused. In his presence, conversations fell silent. Every employee in the bank knew his name. Marcus Johnson, majority shareholder, 70%. Owner of First American Trust Bank. The man whose signature could decide the fate of every career in that building. Yet few had ever seen his wife. Richard stepped quickly out of his office. Suddenly polite. "Mr. Johnson, what an honor." "We didn't know you were coming today." Marcus didn't smile. He scanned the room until his eyes found Amara sitting quietly in the corner. When he saw her, his expression softened. He walked directly toward her, ignoring Richard's attempt to shake his hand. "Amara," he said warmly. He bent slightly, kissing her forehead. "I'm sorry I kept you waiting." The entire lobby froze. Employees exchanged shocked looks. Richard's smirk faded into confusion. "You? You know her?" Richard asked, his voice faltering. Marcus straightened, his arm resting protectively around Amara's shoulder. "Know her? She is my wife." The silence was suffocating. The laughter that had filled the bank earlier seemed like a distant memory now. Faces turned pale. Jaws dropped. Amara finally looked up at Richard, her eyes calm. She didn't need to say anything. The truth had spoken for her. Richard's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, words failed him. The confidence that had carried his insults evaporated like mist under the sun. "Your wife," he stammered. Marcus's gaze hardened. "Yes, and she told me what happened here. She told me how you mocked her, how you laughed at her, how you reduced her to a cleaning lady in front of your staff." The employees who had laughed earlier lowered their heads, their shame visible. Claire, the young teller, swallowed hard. Marcus's voice carried across the lobby, firm and unyielding. "This woman, the one you insulted, has stood by me in every storm. She is the reason I am who I am today. Without her wisdom, her sacrifices, her strength, I wouldn't own a single share of this bank. And yet you dared to humiliate her in the very institution that belongs to her as much as it belongs to me." Richard's knees felt weak. Sweat dotted his forehead. "Sir, I didn't know." Marcus cut him off. "That is exactly the problem. You judge people without knowing them. You assume worth based on appearance. You measure dignity by shoes, by clothes, by the color of skin. That arrogance has no place here." The lobby was silent, every word hitting like a hammer. Employees stood frozen, realizing the depth of what had just unfolded. Amara, calm and graceful, finally spoke. "I came here quietly. I never wanted a scene. But when dignity is stripped away, silence can no longer protect the truth." Her words struck deep. Claire felt her eyes sting with tears. Even some of the older staff lowered their gaze in shame. Richard tried to speak again, but Marcus's voice thundered. "You are finished here." The manager's jaw dropped. "Finished. "You will clear your office by the end of the day," Marcus said. "This bank deserves leadership built on respect, not arrogance. And everyone here should learn something from today." He looked around at the staff. "Never mock a person for how they appear. You never know the power they carry or the story they hide." Amara stood, her presence radiating quiet strength. Together, she and Marcus walked toward the doors, leaving behind silence and stunned faces. The real lesson had only begun. As Marcus and Amara stepped out of the bank, the city air felt lighter, freer. Yet behind them, whispers rippled through the marble halls. Employees exchanged nervous glances, their earlier laughter now tasting bitter in their mouths. But for Amara, the weight of the moment stirred something deeper. Memories rose, uninvited, pulling her back 2 years ago, when life was far from marble floors and expensive suits. She remembered nights of eating from a single pot of soup that had to stretch for 3 days. She remembered cleaning offices after midnight with Marcus, when they were newly married, both exhausted but determined not to give up. She remembered being ignored at job interviews, dismissed before she could even finish her sentences, because of how she looked or how her name sounded. Those scars had taught her patience. They had taught her that silence could be a weapon, but dignity was the shield. Now, standing beside Marcus, she felt the sharp irony of it all. To be mocked in a building she and her husband controlled. And yet, she knew it was not about revenge. It was about something greater. "Marcus," she said softly as they reached their car, "don't fire him just to punish him. Let's make this a lesson that spreads wider than humiliation." Marcus studied her, his strong hands resting on the car door. He admired her heart, still filled with mercy when she had every reason to be angry. "What do you want, Amara?" he asked. She looked back at the tall glass building, the symbol of power and pride. "I want him and everyone in there to understand that respect cannot be bought or worn. It has to be lived. If this bank truly belongs to us, then it must stand for something more than money." Marcus nodded slowly. He had built an empire with numbers and contracts, but it was her vision that gave the empire its soul. The next morning, the staff of First American Trust Bank filed nervously into the grand lobby. A meeting had been called by Marcus Johnson himself. Rumors had spread like wildfire, the arrogant manager's humiliation. The mysterious woman revealed to be the majority owner's wife, and the thunder of Marcus's voice that had echoed through the building. Richard sat stiffly near the front, pale and restless. He hadn't slept. His pride had been shattered, and he knew his position hung by a thread. At precisely 9 o'clock, Marcus entered, with Amara at his side. The room fell into reverent silence. The employees rose instinctively, as though royalty had arrived. Marcus raised his hand, gesturing for them to sit. His deep voice carried easily across the room. "Yesterday," he began, "something happened in this bank that revealed more than I ever wanted to see. A woman walked into this building with dignity, and instead of being treated with respect, she was mocked. She was insulted. She was judged for her appearance rather than her worth. And you all laughed." Shame washed over the room. No one dared to speak. Marcus continued, "That woman is my wife. But even if she were not, the behavior I witnessed is unacceptable. This bank is not just a place of numbers and accounts. It is a place of trust. And trust begins with respect." He paused, then stepped aside. Amara moved forward. Her voice was softer, but it carried a strength that filled every corner of the hall. "I am not here to shame you," she said. "I am here to remind you. Every person who walks through these doors carries a story you do not know. Some carry scars you cannot see. Some carry dreams bigger than their clothes or their wallets suggest. If you laugh at them, you do not just laugh at a person. You laugh at humanity itself. Her words pressed on their hearts like a gentle but firm hand. Claire, the young teller, felt tears welling. She whispered, "She's right. She's so right." Amara continued, "Respect is the currency that never loses value. If this bank is to thrive, it must trade in more than money. It must trade in humanity." The silence that followed was heavy, but it was not empty. It was full of reflection, of shame, of awakening. Richard sat frozen, his hands trembling. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. His arrogance, once his shield, now crushed him under its weight. "Mr. Stone," Marcus said, his tone direct, "you failed as a leader yesterday. You failed not because you made a mistake, but because you mocked someone for being who they are. That is not leadership. That is weakness." Richard's throat tightened. He wanted to plead, to explain, but words failed him. Amara's gaze softened as it met his. "You can choose what kind of man you will be from this day forward," she said. "You can cling to arrogance, or you can learn humility. The choice is yours. But remember, every choice writes the story of your legacy." Richard lowered his head. The weight of his shame pressed him down. For the first time, he saw the mirror of who he had become, and he didn't like the reflection. Marcus spoke firmly. "You will step down as manager today. But if you wish to stay in this institution, you may under one condition. You will start again from the bottom. You will learn humility by working among the very people you once looked down upon." Gasps filled the room. Some were shocked at the mercy, others at the humiliation. Richard's lips trembled. You would give me that chance?" Amara nodded. "Redemption is not cheap, but it is possible. What you do with it will define you." Tears stung Richard's eyes. For the first time, he bowed his head not in pride, but in gratitude. Weeks passed. The bank changed. The echo of that unforgettable meeting lingered in every corner. Employees began greeting every customer with genuine warmth, no matter their clothes, no matter their background. A culture of respect began to blossom. Richard was no longer the manager. Instead, he was assigned to assist with maintenance, cleaning floors, and organizing files. At first, he felt humiliated, but slowly, he began to see the world he had once mocked. He met janitors who worked 2 jobs to feed their families. He met tellers who carried silent struggles but smiled every day at customers. For the first time, Richard saw the humanity he had ignored. And slowly, something inside him broke the arrogance. The pride making room for something new. Amara often visited the bank, not as a shareholder flaunting power, but as a quiet presence reminding them of the lesson they had all learned. She spoke to employees about dignity, about patience, about the strength of those who endure silently. Her words became seeds that grew into a new culture. Even Claire, the young teller, found courage. Inspired by Amara, she enrolled in night classes, determined to rise beyond her position. Amara encouraged her, saying, "Never let anyone tell you your worth is small. You are more than they see." Months later, the bank stood transformed. Customers whispered about how differently they were treated there compared to other institutions. Respect had become its foundation and trust its greatest wealth. Richard, now a humbled man, approached Amara one afternoon as she visited. His clothes were simple, his hands rough from work, but his eyes carried something new: sincerity. "Mrs. Johnson," he said quietly, "I don't deserve your kindness. But I want you to know, I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying to be better." Amara smiled gently. "That is all anyone can ask, to try and to change. Do not waste the chance you were given. Use it to lift others." Richard nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus and Amara stood outside the bank, hand in hand. The glass building glowed golden in the fading light. "Do you see it, Marcus?" Amara asked softly. "This place is more than marble and glass now. It's a place of lessons, a place of dignity." Marcus kissed her forehead. "Because of you. You didn't just protect your own dignity. You gave everyone else a chance to find theirs." Amara looked up at the building, her eyes shining. She knew the journey was not just about her or Marcus. It was about every person who had ever been underestimated, mocked, or silenced. It was about proving that respect was the true wealth of humanity. And as the city lights flickered on, Amara whispered to herself, "Sometimes the ones you laugh at carry the power you could never imagine. And sometimes a single insult becomes the seed of an unforgettable lesson." The story was no longer just hers. It had become the legacy of an entire institution. Moral lesson of the story is that never judge a person by their appearance or circumstances. True worth lies in dignity, respect, and character. Arrogance can destroy. But humility and compassion can transform lives and institutions. Like and subscribe the channel for more interesting videos.